Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, we're going to break down what we might be able to expect from second-year wide receivers, the big five from the 24 class. Now, this is going to be Lad McConkey, Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison, Odunze, and Malik Nabers. We're going to take a look at some film, take a look at some advanced stats, and then take a look at, on average, how wide receivers progress in terms of growth in both target share, receptions, yards, and touchdowns from year 1 to year 2. And then assess as to what we think their production might look like based on these averages. Now, this video is more for fun than it is, specifically what we're exactly going to get out of these guys, because it's, there's so many factors that come into what production we get: injuries, competition, the offense, the quarterback play, and the like. But I think this is going to be pretty fun. And so the first wide receiver we're going to take a look at here is Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars traded down from 17 to 23rd overall in order to acquire this guy in the 24 NFL draft. He was selected to be their long-term answer to be their wide receiver 1 for Trevor Lawrence. It was the first time they had significantly invested in wide receiver, being Jacksonville during the Trevor Lawrence era. Now, when you talk about Brian Thomas Jr., you talk about elite speed, elite burst, acceleration. This guy is a superb athlete. He also has a very good vertical as well. He can be used all over the field. He can be used in the X, the Z, the slot. He is extremely versatile. You can even use him in the run game as well on end rounds and the like. He's surprisingly good after the catch for somebody his size as well. It's really impressive, and he is a true 3-level threat as a wide receiver. He can be used in the short game on screens. He is incredible there. I think that's going to translate with Liam Cohen. He can be used on crossers. He can separate on the dig route as well. And obviously, he can be used vertically deep down the field on those 9 routes and the slot fades. He was incredible in college, deep down the field, and he was just as impressive at the NFL level. Now, taking a look at some of his athleticism here, his 4.33 40-yard dash is in the 98th percentile of wide receivers. His 122 speed score, which is height and weight adjusted, is in the 99th percentile. His 128.5 burst score is in the 83rd percentile. And his 10.44 catch radius is in the 98th percentile as well. Now, when we take a look at where he finished in a full PPR setting with no extra bonuses for long plays or anything, pretty standard, he finished as the wide receiver 4 overall as a rookie, finishing with 133 targets, 87 receptions, 1,282 receiving yards, and 10 receiving touchdowns. This is incredible because he was definitely used extensively after the bye. He was by far and away the most targeted player, but his targets were really kind of inconsistent throughout the first 10 games or so of his NFL career. Definitely had some high highs, but did have a couple of bum games. Now, he did get injured during the Green Bay game, so he's playing through a rib injury through 2 more games after that. So I really think his production could have been even more impressive, to be honest with you, which is pretty scary when you think about it. Now, taking a look at some of these advanced stats here, his air yards of 1,542 were 8th in the NFL. His air yard share of 33.6% were 15th. His average distance of target ADOT of 11.6 was 38th, which is impressive because he is incredible deep down the field, but that also shows that he is incredible over the intermediate and short area of the field as well. Otherwise, his ADOT would be much further down the field if he was strictly a deep guy. Now, taking a look at his deep targets, his 28 were 5th in the NFL, his 16 red zone targets were 15th, and his target quality rating of 5.94 was 17th, which is actually pretty impressive considering, he had both Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones throwing him the ball. Now, taking a look at his yards per out run, his 2.55 were 8th in the NFL. His 2.23 formation adjusted yards per out run were 10th. His 9.6 yards per target was 15th. His yards per reception of 14.7 was good for 23rd, which is actually pretty impressive when you look at his ADOT of 11.6, that's 38th. His yards per team pass attempt of 2.35 was good for 9th as well. Now, taking a look at his target separation, his 1.79 yards of target separation were good for 23rd, which is also impressive because he was used all over the field. He wasn't strictly used in a role that allows separation. Taking a look at his target premium, his 40.9% was good for 5th. That is how much more impressive he is than the players around him. Now, his dominator rating of 43.6% was good for 2nd. That is his market share of the team's yards and touchdowns. His juke rate of 10.8% was good for 10th in the NFL. And his explosive rating of 121.3 was good for 8th. That accounts for his amount of plays and the percentage of plays that go for 15 plus yards on the ground and 20 plus through the air. This guy is a game-breaking wide receiver 1, And I don't really even think we've scratched the surface of what he can be at the NFL level, especially considering that's 1 year of many that we can expect to see from him. Now, if you take a look at the bottom left-hand portion of the screen, these are his percentiles in terms of his success rates on man, zone, and press. His success rate versus man coverage was 81st percentile. His zone was 38th percentile, but it is important to note that he got much better in feeling the soft spots in zone coverage and sitting down adequately towards the latter half of the season, so I expect that to be at least over the 50th percentile this season. And his success rate versus press coverage was 93rd percentile. This guy is dominant against press man coverage. Now, I took a look at a sample size of 5 years and wide receivers who played at least 10 games in both the rookie and sophomore seasons. Now, going from year 1 to 2, they saw a 12% increase in targets from year 1 to year 2, a 14% increase in receptions from years 1 to 2, a 17% increase in yards from years 1 to 2, and then a 13% increase in touchdowns from years 1 to 2. Now, I also wanted to show you some predictions based on these average increases in production for each one of these stats, and then take a look from what we saw in their rookie season to what we might be able to project in a realistic scenario in their second season. Now, keep in mind that there's a lot more, like I said, that goes into this than just, well, this is what he did 1 year, this is what he's going to do now. But based on these averages, I think we can expect some very good things from him. Now, he had 133 targets in 2024, 87 receptions, 1,282 receiving yards, and 10 receiving touchdowns. If you account for these increases in production on average, he would have 149 targets this season, 99 receptions, 1,500 yards on the dot, and 11 receiving touchdowns. To put that into perspective, he was already the wide receiver 4 as a rookie. Well, these production numbers, if they were increased from 2024 to 2025, would also have him placing 4th overall. It's just that he would be much closer to the wide receiver 3 than he was this past season. But nonetheless, this is very encouraging. I do expect to see an increase in total production because he should be the focal point of the offense the entirety of the season, not just post-bye. And Liam Cohen has said as much that he is going to run the offense through Brian Thomas. This guy is a game-breaking wide receiver 1. He's only going to get better. And now that they have Travis Hunter on the other side, I don't think they can just bracket this guy all game. I think that Brian Thomas is going to explode in his second NFL season. Now, we move on to our next wide receiver, Malik Nabers of the New York Giants. This guy is another game-breaking wide receiver 1. He was selected 6th overall by the New York Giants. He was an absolute stud at LSU, playing with Brian Thomas, the first receiver we spoke about here. Now, he was selected, like I said, 6th overall. Now, the situation in his rookie season was atrocious. You want to talk about poor quarterback play? I doubt very many people had it worse than him. His quarterback for a couple games was Daniel Jones, which was terrible, but somehow the best quarterback he played with, right? He also played with quarterbacks such as Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, and Tim Boyle, if that tells you anything. This guy is like a Ferrari accelerating. He can accelerate also while changing directions. That is a truly rare trait. Somebody like Antonio Brown is also able to do this. Now, it allows him to take advantage of defenses while not necessarily being the most nuanced route runner, but he is improving there. But the thing is, once he reaches the potential he has as a route runner, I don't know how you're going to cover this guy. He has an insanely deadly speed release off the line of scrimmage. He does need to work on his hand fighting, but nonetheless, this guy, just like Brian Thomas, is a true 3-level threat. He's incredible on slant routes. I believe he had about an 84 to 85% success rate on those. He has an above average success rate on 9 routes. He can be used on those crossers, those digs. He has a dangerous ability after the catch. He has a tremendous feel for space. He can shake tackles with physicality and elusiveness, juke you out of your shoes. Now, he did have a couple drops, but, with high volume comes drops. But this guy, like I said, is a Ferrari. This guy is a rare breed, and he's in the mold of somebody like Jamar Chase, who, in my opinion, is my favorite archetype of wide receiver in today's NFL. But getting into his athleticism, his 4.40 40-yard dash was 93rd percentile. Now, this was run at a pro day. It was reported anywhere from 4.35, 4.38, 4.40. So take that with a grain of salt. Nonetheless, even if it's 4.40, that's still great. which if it was a 4.40 would give him a 105.3 speed score, which is going to be 85th percentile. He has a 135.9 burst score, which is 98th percentile. He didn't do the athleticism drills necessary, but he's very athletic, and I have no worries about his agility by any means. And he also has a 78th percentile catch radius. Now, taking a look at his finish, in only 15 games, mind you, he was the wide receiver 6 this past season, with 170 targets, 109 receptions, 1,204 receiving yards, and 7 receiving touchdowns. What makes this even more impressive is that even though, yes, he received quite a bit of volume in terms of targets, his quarterback play was atrocious. He was the only guy defenses had to worry about after Theo Johnson was injured. It was a terrible situation. Getting into some advanced stats here, his 1,618 air yards were good for 4th in the NFL. His 44.8% air yard share was good for 3rd. His ADOT of 9.5 was good for 68th. So he was used a lot in the short game. Why? It's not that he couldn't win deep, it's because his quarterbacks couldn't throw deep. They just tried to get the ball in his hands as soon as they could and let him do his stuff after the catch. Now, he had 28 deep targets, which were good for 5th. He had 15 red zone targets, which is good for 18th. His target quality rating of 5.35 was good for 38th. Now, mind you, that's with a lot of these passes, his ADOT is 9.5, being short passes. He still was not given, generally accurate passes here. And now, while some were catchable, a lot of these were not putting him in a position to be able to just catch the ball and immediately get after the catch. Taking a look at his yards per out run, his 2.21 were good for 23rd. Situation also matters there. His formation adjusted yards per out run of 1.91 was good for 24th. His yards per target of 7.1 was good for 83rd. His 11.0 yards per reception was good for 82nd. His yards per team pass attempt of 2.33 were good for 10th. Now that is a better idea. That gives you a much better idea here than his yards per out run of how talented he is, because his quarterback play was terrible. His 1.55 yards of target separation were good for 53rd. Now, mind you, a lot of these were short passes, so it's harder to just get tons of separation on these. His target premium of plus 12.7 was good for 33rd. His dominator rating, which is his, once again, market share of the team's yards and touchdowns of 46.6%, was first among all wide receivers. His 12.3% juke rate was good for 8th in the NFL. That's his ability to force missed tackles after the catch. Like I said, this guy is dynamic with the ball in his hands. And his explosive rating of 108.6 was good for 23rd, which, mind you, was also held in check by his quarterback play. This guy received a quarterback upgrade, not 1, not 2, but potentially even 3, and Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and potentially Jackson Dart, the rookie first-round quarterback. The sky's the limit for this guy, and I think we see much more production from him this season, especially if he's able to stay healthy for all 17 games. Now, once again, if you take a look at the bottom left portion of your screen, he had an 82nd percentile success rate against man coverage this season, a 62nd percentile success rate against zone, and an 82nd percentile success rate against press coverage. He is a well-rounded wide receiver who specializes in destroying man coverage, especially in the short area of the field. Now, taking a look once again from year 1 to year 2, there was an average increase of 12% in targets, 14% in receptions, 17% in yards, and 13% in touchdowns. So, I took a look at his 17-game pace because, once again, he did miss 2 games with that concussion early on in the year. And if he had played all 17 games, he would have probably had around 193 targets, 124 receptions, 1,365 receiving yards, and 8 receiving touchdowns, which, if you increase from year 1 to year 2 on average, would give him 217 targets, which is ludicrous, 141 receptions, 1,597 receiving yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns, which, if this were to happen, based on where wide receivers finished in a full PPR setting in 2024, would make him the wide receiver 2, only behind Jamar Chase, who just had a ridiculous Triple Crown season. While it sounds like a long shot, I think these are realistic projections. Maybe not quite as much the targets, but I think he's going to be more efficient given he has probably 3 quarterback upgrades now. I think he absolutely could finish as a top 3 wide receiver. He could finish as the wide receiver 1 for sure. And yeah, I think you have nothing but excitement ahead of you if you own Malik Nabers in fantasy, especially Dynasty. I really wouldn't trade this guy for anyone straight up as a wide receiver, nor would I Brian Thomas. I think these guys are explosive, game-breaking wide receiver 1s. And just like with Brian Thomas, I don't think we've seen remotely close to what the ceiling of Malik Nabers looks like yet. But if you hang on to him, especially like I said in Dynasty, you just might see a ceiling season from this guy, which is going to be absolutely ludicrous. Third wide receiver we're going to talk about in this video is Marvin Harrison Jr. of the Arizona Cardinals. Often lauded as a generational prospect by many. He was my wide receiver 2 this past season behind Malik Nabers. But yeah, he was selected 4th overall to the Cardinals. That's elite draft capital, even better than Malik Nabers, who was selected 6th. Now, the situation, which I also admittedly thought was fantastic, in Arizona was not as ideal for him. I'm going to get into a couple reasons why, but nonetheless, coming out, this guy was a technician. You want to talk about the full assortment of release packages, a good route runner, and a good feel for zone coverage and man. He knows all the tricks of the trade, how to manipulate defenders, set them up for failure consistently. Very good hands, although in contested catch situations, he did have a couple struggles this past season. I just think that he was misused. He was used strictly, for the most part, as a vertical X wide receiver on deep routes, the 9 routes, the fades. Really wasn't used across the formation, was not put in motion. No gimme stuff. And now, in my Marvin Harrison Jr. video I made a couple months ago, some people were criticizing, saying, well, you don't draft this guy to give him gimme touches. Well, one thing is, yes, you do. You give all your good players gimme touches. Why? Because they're very good. You want the ball in their hands. You want to keep them happy. You want to produce offense. The Arizona Cardinals offense was fine, but it could definitely have been a lot better and more efficient, specifically in the passing game, if they would give him more of these gimme catches, right? But yeah, nonetheless, the target competition really was basically Trey McBride, so he was definitively the second option here. The quarterback play, Kyler Murray really he doesn't go through his reads long enough to allow longer developing plays to work themselves out as much as you would like, and so that resulted in quite a few dump-offs to Trey McBride, which as a McBride owner in fantasy, I was pretty happy, but as a Marvin Harrison Jr. owner, was a little bit depressing, to be honest with you. The quarterback play is probably going to be the same. I do expect him, though, to be used a little bit more creatively in the sense of at least in motion and probably see some slot work, or at the very least improve in the position in which they have him as the vertical X from year 1 to year 2. Now, taking a look at his athleticism, it was estimated he ran a 4.46 40-yard dash, which is 77th percentile, but this guy, once again, is over 6'3", 205 pounds. That would give him an 87th percentile speed score, and he has a 90th percentile catch radius. Now, taking a look at his production, in his rookie season, he finished as the wide receiver 30 in a full PPR setting. On 116 targets, he had 62 receptions, 885 yards, and 8 touchdowns. This rookie season is quite reminiscent of that of CeeDee Lamb, so while it was definitely, disappointing compared to what some people projected, some people were projecting him to just walk into the NFL and immediately be the wide receiver 5 or better. That's a very unrealistic projection for anybody. It could happen with anybody. Brian Thomas was the 4, Nabers was the 6 in 15 games, but nonetheless, that's really not fair to anybody. And while I didn't have him as my wide receiver 1, I surely did think he was going to have a better season than this, but I also didn't foresee the questionable deployment and usage, right? Now, taking a look at his air yards, he had 1,566 air yards, which is good for 6th, which goes to show you how terrible his targets were in terms of the accuracy. His air yard share of 42.3% was 7th. His ADOT of 13.5 was 17th, deep down the field in terms of the targets, supported by his deep targets of 26, which was good for 7th in the NFL. He had 14 red zone targets, which was 25th. He had a target quality rating, however, of 4.78, which is good for 66th. That's not going to cut it, but the usage definitely doesn't help because it's harder to corral in these deep passes. They're generally less accurate. Once again, they're not gimme routes. His yards per out run of 1.68 was good for 58th. His formation adjusted yards per out run of 1.25 was good for 66th. His yards per target of 7.6 was 73rd. His yards per reception of 14.3 were good for 27th. And his yards per team pass attempt of 1.63 was good for 42nd. Not the best, but once again, usage is a big reason here. Now, taking a look at his target separation, his 1.03 was good for 107th. This target separation thing, it's much more easy to get target separation when you're working in the short and intermediate area of the field more than just vertically deep down the field, especially when you're a guy like Marvin Harrison that just isn't a true burner. He has adequate long speed, but that's just not his game. Think about it. They were using him as poorly basically as they could have used him, and he still almost had 900 yards and he had 8 touchdowns, right? That's pretty impressive to me. His target premium of 2.1% was good for 68th, not that great. His dominator rating, which once again is his market share of the yards and touchdowns of his offense of 30.5%, was good for 15th. He has a juke rate of 0.0%. He didn't force any missed tackles, but it's because he wasn't really set up to do that in space. And his explosive rating of 101.9 was good for 33rd. All in all, they definitely could have given him a better rookie season by using him correctly. But nonetheless, considering how he was used, which is not to his strengths in any way, shape, or form, I was thoroughly impressed. He had a couple big blow-up games, and I think we're going to see a pretty substantial jump from year 1 to year 2 with Marvin Harrison. Now, if you take a look at the bottom left-hand portion of your screen, his success rate against man coverage was 75th percentile, his success rate versus zone was 72nd percentile, and his success rate versus press coverage was 80th percentile. That goes to show you that this guy was not a scrub. The total production does not display how talented he actually is. He is so much more talented than the production he had, which was still more than adequate in my opinion. Every rookie can't just be Puka Nacua or Malik Nabers or Brian Thomas, especially when they are not used to their strengths in any way, shape, or form. Now, once again, taking a look at year 1 to year 2, we should expect a 12% increase in targets, a 14% increase in receptions, a 17% increase in yards, and a 13% increase in touchdowns based on the averages here. So this past season, he had 116 targets, 62 receptions, 885 receiving yards, and 8 total touchdowns. Now, if we use these projected increases based on the averages, he would have 138 targets in this next season, 71 receptions, 1,035 receiving yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns. Now, this would have him as the wide receiver 16 based on where wide receivers finished in 2024. Now, I do think he has the opportunity to massively surpass this, mostly in receptions and total receiving yards especially. Touchdowns is a little bit tricky. It's not, it's not a sticky stat as everybody says, so that could go either way, but this guy's very good. He's an absolute technician. He does everything you want correctly. He has great size. He's incredible in the red zone. I think that his touchdowns actually could go up and should go up if he utilized correctly and targeted enough. And obviously the wide receiver 30 finish was a little bit disappointing, considering the expectations that were placed on him. But it's not a death sentence. This guy was very good. He was used incorrectly. And even if he's still used incorrectly, he should get better at this craft. And I personally think they're going to give him a couple more gimme routes every game. I'd expect them to want to get the most out of their 4th overall pick. Drew Petzing could disagree though, so we'll have to see. But yeah, based on this, we could potentially expect him to finish right around the wide receiver 16, which would be great in my opinion. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I think we should expect great things from Marvin Harrison Jr. because despite what plenty of people seem to think, he was actually very good as a rookie. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mage Jack, and Infamy MTG. If you would like to become a Patreon member, the link's going to be below in the comment section. There we're going to have weekly live streams where we go over, fantasy news, potential buy low candidates, sell high candidates, depending on the news. We're going to give you specific league-oriented roster construction with trade advice based on your specific league settings there. We're going to give you access to early videos. We're going to give you the ability to suggest videos as well. I made a private video for someone on Isaac Rendo, some of the pluses, minuses to his game, things to like, and specific price points to sell or buy for. You're also going to find that we are working on a model with predictive capability for running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends, and wide receivers based on a variety of specific metrics, minimums and maximums to be in an acceptable range for us in fantasy that will be predictive and lead us to being able to be more successful, we think, than the average person in determining which prospects based on these thresholds are likely to hit or unlikely to hit. And we're also going to be updating that each and every single year with the new prospects so that we can continuously have the best model possible. So once again, if you'd like to become a member, the link's going to be below in the comment section. Thanks. Moving on to the 4th wide receiver we're going to discuss in this video, we have McConkey of the Chargers. Now, he was a 2nd round pick, but boy did he land in a good landing spot. He has Justin Herbert as his quarterback. This past season, his target competition was laughable, to be honest with you. Quentin Johnston was maybe Palmer. Regardless, he was the wide receiver 1, and for good reason. This guy is, just like Marvin Harrison, an absolute technician as a wide receiver, except in my opinion, he's better than Marvin Harrison Jr. after the catch. Now, once again, he landed in the 2nd round with the Chargers. He has Justin Herbert as his quarterback. Unfortunately, he has Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh as his coaches, being his offensive coordinator and head coach. they're going to want to do more of the run-heavy Greg Roman crap that we've seen from him in the past. They signed Najee Harris. They drafted Amari at Hampton. So I do think this is going to hurt him. But nonetheless, he is incredible. He has good hands. He has an incredible feel for both man and zone coverage. Like I said, a technician, polished releases off line of scrimmage. And he's very underrated after the catch. He's not necessarily the shiftiest guy, but he gets upfield immediately. He can juke you out of your shoes if need be, though. He's just not, the most physical guy. Once again, his talent, in my opinion, is more impressive than you might believe. Now, taking a look at his athleticism, his 4.39 40-yard dash is in the 94th percentile of wide receivers. His 98.8 speed scores in the 69th percentile. His 123.2 burst scores in the 60th percentile, and his 10.04 catch radius is in the 55th percentile. So an above average athlete across the board here, which I think does translate to the NFL field. Now, this past season as a rookie, he finished as the wide receiver 13, which is very impressive, especially when you contextualize that with the low amount of targets and with which he received. He had 112 targets, 82 receptions, 1,149 receiving yards, and 7 receiving touchdowns. Very impressive rookie season. I expected good things from him, but I did not expect that, to be honest with you. He spent a lot of his time injured at Georgia, and just while we all knew he was talented based on the film and the advanced stats when he was playing, the total numbers just did not look as good because he wasn't able to put a fully healthy season together for the most part. Now, when you take a look at his air yards, his 1,105 were good for 30th in the NFL. His air yard share of 27.3% was good for 39th. His ADOT of 9.9 was good for 66th. So he was used more so in the slot and as a flanker, more so than just as an X on the line of scrimmage. But when I show you his success rate against press coverage, it's not a weakness, let me tell you that much. His deep targets of 9 were good for 70th. He wasn't really used, like I said, as a field stretcher as often, although he can do it. He was used a lot more in the slot, those chain moving conversions. His red zone targets of 9 were good for 52nd, which makes his 7 touchdowns pretty impressive, and some of them were from further out. His target quality rating of 5.75 was good for 22nd, that's fine. His yards per out run of 2.56 were good for 7th, beautiful. His formation adjusted yards per out run of 2.40 were good for 6th. His yards per target of 10.3 were good for 8th. His yards per reception of 14 were good for 29th. His 2.40 yards per team pass attempt were good for 8th. Beautiful numbers across the board here. His target separation of 1.62 yards was good for 43rd. His target premium of 26.3% was good for 14th. His dominator rating, once again, his market share of the team's yards and touchdowns of 31.6% was good for 12th. He has a juke rate of 18.3%, but I don't think it was a good enough sample size of attempts in space to really give him a ranking, which is why I don't think they did, being player profiler. And his explosive rating of 113.9 was good for 14th. Remember, that's rushes of 15 or more yards or receptions of more than 20. This guy is a dangerous wide receiver who is only going to get better, connected to Justin Herbert. And while they did bring in Trey Harris in terms of target competition, this guy is going to be their wide receiver 1, make no mistake. Now, how I was saying that while he was generally used as a flanker in the slot, that, make no mistake, he can win as an X? Take a look at the bottom left-hand portion of your screen for me. His success rate versus man coverage was 83rd percentile as a rookie. He had a 78th percentile success rate against zone, but he had a 98th percentile success rate against press coverage. True positional versatility, that is a descriptor you can use for Ladd McConkey, and an accurate one. Now, once again, year 1 to year 2, we should expect a 12% increase in targets, a 14% increase in receptions, a 17% increase in yards, and a 13% increase in touchdowns on average. Now, this past season, he only played 16 games, so I put in his 17-game pace. He would have had 119 targets, 87 receptions, 1,221 receiving yards, and 7 receiving touchdowns. If you input these average increases in production, what might we be able to expect? 133 targets, 99 receptions, 1,429 receiving yards, and 8 receiving touchdowns. If he's able to do this, he would have finished as the wide receiver 4 this past season. I think we can expect an increase. Do we see the amount of yards potentially? Maybe not, but it is well realistic in terms of the possibilities, in terms of his outcomes. For him to be a top 5 wide receiver, he is connected to a good quarterback, and he was incredibly efficient because of that, despite limited volume. If I own Lad McConkey, I'm potentially selling him depending on what I can get, but I am not in any hurry to. I think he's going to be the focal point of the passing offense, and I think we can expect good things from this guy. The only thing that I could foresee getting in his way is injuries, because he has demonstrated that he does get hurt quite often. He did play through it in terms of it was multiple shoulder injuries as a rookie, and in college he missed significant time. That's the only thing I really worry about with him. The talent is not a question. I think this guy's going to be very good, and if he can hold up, he should have a legendary career as an NFL wide receiver connected to an elite quarterback for a substantial amount of time. The fifth and final wide receiver we're going to discuss in this video is Odunze of the Chicago Bears. Now, you want to talk about a throwback X wide receiver with some positional versatility to play in the slot as a big slot and even as a flanker at times. That describes Odunze. This guy has vice grips for hands. He's not the best at stacking vertically deep down the field, but he can do it. And the best thing is he doesn't really need to create separation, because he will sky over you and moss you every single time. As you'll see in these highlights, he consistently comes through in the clutch, let alone just in general with these contested catches when it matters the most. He will box you out, he will shove you away, and he will dominate you. Now, he landed in Chicago with a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams, who did play very poorly. He definitely has his strengths and weaknesses. His coaching was laughable. Yeah, I don't really need to go into that. I think it's pretty widely known how poor that was. But he also landed as the wide receiver 3. He got JSN'd. He was behind both Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. It's going to be hard to usurp guys like that who are veterans, who are very good at their craft, and have demanded respect, and deservedly so, for years. Well, Keenan Allen's gone. They still have DJ Moore there, but they have a massive coaching upgrade, at least in my opinion, and projected to be, in Ben Johnson. This guy's creative, and I think he's going to unlock Odunze, and we might be able to get what we should have been able to get from him this past season, this season. Now, you want to talk about an above-average athlete? This guy is an incredible athlete. These are all numbers from the actual combine. Yes, he wasn't scared. He actually performed in the combine. His 4.45 40-yard dash was 80th percentile among wide receivers, but considering he's 6'3", 212 pounds, that was a 111 speed score, which is 94th percentile. His 128.3 burst score is 82nd percentile. His 10.91 agility score is in the 86th percentile. And his 10.40 catch radius is in the 97th percentile. This guy is an incredible athlete. Now, you want to talk about his production? It wasn't so incredible. He was a wide receiver 49 in a full PPR setting. On 101 targets, he had 54 receptions, 734 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. A little bit disappointing, but once again, I don't know what people expected as the wide receiver 3 on a team with a rookie quarterback and terrible coaching. I personally bought him because I understood that yes, he wasn't going to produce like we wanted in year 1. It was about the future. This guy's very good. Now, you want to talk about air yards? His 1,398 were good for 14th, which, considering he came down with 734, should tell you everything you need to know about the accuracy of his targets. But I do think that his role is going to be helped along. I think he's going to see more slot work, more movement, not play as static all the time. But to be fair, at least they didn't Marvin Harrison Jr. this guy as only a vertical X. That can be said at least about Shane Waldron. Now, his air yard share of 30.8% was good for 25th. His ADOT of 13.8 was 11th. So once again, he was in general targeted way deep down the field. That's going to lead to inefficiency in terms of the targets to actual receptions, and thus the total potential yards to actualized yards. His 23 deep targets were 11th. That further supports that argument. However, he had 18 red zone targets, which is good for 10th. His target quality rating of 4.35 was 82nd. Yeah. Now, taking a look at his yards per out run, his 1.33 were 75th. His formation adjusted yards per out run of 1.08 was good for 76th. His yards per target of 7.3 was 79th. His yards per reception of 13.6 was 33rd. His yards per team pass attempt of 1.30 was good for 57th. Now, his target separation of 1.62, that was 41st. But once again, it's not necessarily that he's a poor separator, it's that he was used vertically deep down the field where, if you just don't have that burner speed, he just doesn't separate as much, but he doesn't need to separate. If you give him a ball that's even remotely accurate, he's going to moss you deep down the field. His target premium of 13.5% was good for 88th, not the best. His dominator rating of 17.8% was 63rd, but once again, he got JSN'd. His juke rate of 10.5%, I don't think he had enough attempts for them to rank him. He's okay after the catch. He can break tackles. He's not really going to juke you. He can get yak in a straight line. That's not really the strength to his game. Physicality is. And his explosive rating of 88.6 was good for 58th. Once again, that's receptions of 20 plus or rushes of 15 plus. Just in general, his season could have been much better with better quarterback play and a better role. But he got JSN'd, had poor quarterback play, and admittedly, he did have his own struggles as a rookie, but I think we can expect good things from him in the future. Now, if you would take a look at the bottom left-hand portion of your screen, his success rate versus man coverage was 71st percentile, so very good and impressive there. Now, his success rate versus zone was 52nd percentile. He was okay. You would hope for better than that, but it's not such a deficiency that it's worrying to me. And his success rate versus press was 87th percentile. This guy has what it takes to be an X at the NFL level, and I think that he would benefit from being moved around more, put in motion, and used more creatively. Not have all of his targets be deep down the field. It's hard to actualize your production that way. Now, taking a look once again at the average increases in targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns. This past season, he had 101 targets, 54 receptions, 734 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. If we use these average increases, that would put him at 113 targets, 62 receptions, 859 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. That would put him as the wide receiver 42, but I definitely think that among all these players, he is going to see the most in terms of the increase in total production from year 1 to year 2. Like I said, Keenan Allen is out of the picture. We now have Ben Johnson. While yes, they did draft Colston Loveland and Luther Burden, Burden is more of your slot only guy in my opinion. I guess you could use him as a flanker, probably not going to use him as an X. And then Loveland is a tight end, so I don't think that he's going to directly take from Odunze. I think that Odunze is going to be the wide receiver 1. You may disagree, you may think it's more, you may really not have an idea. I personally think that it is going to be Rome, but I don't think we're going to see one of these Brian Thomas or Nabers type seasons from him until the target competition kind of clears out. I think that they'll look to get rid of DJ Moore potentially as soon as this next season. If they do, they might not. And I think they'll definitely look to get rid of Cole Kmet. But nonetheless, even if none of this happens, I think we see an increase in production from Rome Odunze. And I think that he might be one of those guys where the talent on the field just does never match the production with which we get from him. But nonetheless, I think we see a massive jump in production from year 1 to year 2, similar to that of Jackson Smith and Jigba. The only thing we have to worry about, at least in my opinion, is going to be the target competition. Now, to conclude, like I said, this is more just a fun video rather than, hey, this is going to be what happens with all these players. These are just average increases in production, and what theoretically, based on these averages, we could see from these 5 wide receivers. For brevity, and I say brevity, this is already, a 40-minute video. I didn't want to include every wide receiver. You could apply all of these to any one of these wide receivers to get an idea of, on average, what we might be able to expect. But I think especially with Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas, we are in special territory with these guys. I think they're going to be elite wide receiver 1s for a long time. I think with McConkey, you have a career wide receiver 1 as well, because I think he's going to be able to offset some of the lack of total volume with efficiency given his quarterback play and his own technical precision. And then with Marvin Harrison, I hope that they expand his role other than just being a purely vertical X. He's good at that, but he could be great if they would allow him to be. I think he does improve though, and I think that while many viewed his rookie season as just a massive disappointment, I don't agree with that. I think he played incredibly well considering the role he was given, and his rookie season was reminiscent of that of CeeDee Lamb as a rookie. I think and they actually draw plenty of comparisons when people compare Marvin Harrison Jr. to active NFL players. And so I think that he has a bright future ahead of him, and I think so does Rome Odunze. I think he got JSN'd. I think the future is bright for him. He may never produce like some of these other guys given his situation, how crowded it is, but I think that all 5 of these guys were incredible as rookies, and I can't wait to see what we can expect from them in the future and what we actually see from them. So what do you guys think? Do you think this was fun? Let me know below in the comment section. Yeah. Please feel free to subscribe to my Patreon. I would really appreciate it. I don't make any money from these videos given the film that's within them. So yeah, I'd really appreciate that. Please give this video a like and a subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Thank you and have a good day.